Can God be proven without the Bible? If it could be demonstrated, I'd definitely like to know, since I care about whether things are true or not. So when I discovered a video this week that claimed to offer evidence for a God that didn't use the Bible, I knew I'd have to take a look. Hello, I'm the Skeptic. I watch videos on YouTube that make extraordinary claims, whether that's flat earth or strange conspiracies, but mostly the claim that a God is real, and then explain why I can't accept their position. Before we get into today's video, please do subscribe, hit that bell notification to be alerted for my next video, and drop a like. That would be amazing. In this God Squad video, Alan Parr from The Beat interviews Frank Turek for the almost 700,000 subscribers on his channel. Frank apparently has ways of proving God without using the Bible, so this should be interesting.
What evidence outside of the Bible do we have that God exists? So excuse me, guys, we're going to start off with the questions about God first. So, all right, I know your Bible says that God exists, but I don't believe in your Bible. So therefore, Mr. Christian,
yeah, good.
Where do you go from there?
This could be the moment we have all been waiting for.
That's great. Yeah. And what we do on a college campus, we talk about, that's one of the big questions we talk about, does God exist? And I normally talk about three arguments for God, or three pieces of evidence for God. The first is that the universe had a beginning, Alan.
Oh dear, this old argument.
There was a beginning to space, time, and matter. And even atheists admit this. I mean, even Stephen Hawking, who was the top physicist in the world until he died about 4 years ago, said this: almost everyone now believes that the universe and time itself had a beginning.
Or that the current local observable universe had a moment that it came to be. Let's see where this goes.
At the Big Bang. In other words, there was a starting point for space, time, and matter. And so this is not even controversial anymore. People are admitting this. The only thing that's controversial, Alan, is what caused the beginning, right?
And it's still okay to say, I don't know. I mean, I definitely don't know, as I'm not a scientist. But just because I don't know, that doesn't mean it must have been a God. You can replace that with anything. I don't know how the universe came to be. It must have been a giant purple walrus called Colin that exists outside of space, time, and matter that no one can demonstrate. I think I can see where this is going already.
And so it seems to me that if space, time, and matter had a beginning, then whatever created space, time, and matter can't be made of space, time, and matter. In other words, the cause must transcend space, time, and matter. So the cause must be spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful to create the universe out of nothing, personal in order to choose to create. You might say, well, why personal? Because to go from a state of nothingness to a state of creation, someone had to make a choice, and only persons can make choices. You know, impersonal forces don't make choices. Gravity doesn't decide to pull something to the ground, right? It just does it.
I knew it! It was Colin! But also, yes, gravity just is. But as for something outside of space, time, matter, blah, 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 that's not been demonstrated. You're just saying words. Who even said that the universe was created? Can things not just be?
So the cause of the universe has to be personal.
No, you think it does, but that doesn't actually mean it does.
The cause would also have to be intelligent.
Why does it have to be intelligent? If a being was intelligent, wouldn't it create a place that 99.999999999999999999999% of its area wasn't likely to kill us?
To have a mind in order to make a choice. So I always ask people this question, Alan. I say, when you think about a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, personal, intelligent cause, who do you think of?
Colin the Purple Walrus! Seriously though, demonstrate that the universe was created. Don't just claim it because you can't fathom the scientific explanation.
People will say God. And then they'll say, well, how do you know it's the Christian God? And my answer is, we don't. Yet. We haven't done enough research yet. I mean, at this point, the creator of the universe could be Allah. But how do we discover if this is Allah or the Christian God? What we need to do is see the evidence for Jesus' resurrection.
Which also can't be proven.
And if we look at that evidence, I think we'll realize that Jesus rose from the dead, which means that the same being that created space, matter, and time is the same being in whose human nature walked out of the tomb 1,986 years ago.
Oh, this square peg will fit into this round hole.
In other words, it is the Christian God, but you don't know it just from what we call the cosmological argument. The cosmological argument is the argument from the beginning of the universe. The second and third arguments, the second argument is the argument from the design of the universe, that if the universe were slightly different by any one of a number of factors, virtually imperceptibly, Alan, this is called the fine-tuning of the universe, there would be no universe, or there would be no universe that could support life.
And how on Colin's green earth would you know that and be able to demonstrate it? There could be very different universes out there that are completely different to ours that also support life, just in a very different way. Not that I'm asserting that there is, you understand. I'm just saying that it's one of many possibilities.
So the universe appears to be fine-tuned for life to exist and even for chemistry to work.
If it was fine-tuned, it needs some work. A universe that hurtles rocks around that can wipe out entire species isn't a very fine place to live.
So, and then the third argument is the argument
when you say fine-tuning, do you mean like if the sun is like the distance from the sun to the earth, like if it was further away, or like it has to, it's perfect now, and if something was out of alignment that we wouldn't...
That's part of it, but... Even from the beginning, let me just give you one fact on this, because this is hard to believe, but...
Oh, good. A Christian fact. This should be amazing.
Hawking, the atheist, put it this way. He said that if the expansion rate of the universe were different by 1 part in 1,000 million a second after the Big Bang, the universe would have collapsed back on itself or never developed galaxies. In other words, if the expansion rate at the very beginning was imperceptibly different virtually than it is now, we wouldn't be here.
And how does that equal God?
Now, what caused that expansion rate to be precisely what it needed to be? Seems to me the same being that created space-time and matter is the same being that fine-tuned the expansion rate so we could be here today.
Sure, and it took billions of years to fine-tune it to the point of life on Earth. What an amazing creator.
So from the very beginning, the universe is fine-tuned, which means you can't say, well, by chance it evolved. No. This is how the expansion rate began at the creation point.
Can we say a starting point? I don't agree with creation point.
And if it were different then or different now, we wouldn't be here. So part of what you said is true, but even from the very beginning, it's true. So the fine-tuning shows also that the creator has to be a very intelligent and powerful being in order to fine-tune the universe to be as fine-tuned as it is. And that's just one of about a dozen different things that you can look at and say, if any one of those were imperceptibly different, we wouldn't be here.
But you don't know that. It's just guessing, since we can't test what the current local universe would be like if something was different in its coming to be.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And the third.
Yep.
Yeah, the third argument is the moral argument. And the moral argument says if there's one thing morally wrong out there, just one, like it's wrong to torture babies for fun.
1 Samuel 15:3. Do not spare them, but kill both man and woman, child and infant. Exodus 12:29. At midnight the Lord struck down all the firstborn in the land. Isaiah 13:16. Their infants will be dashed into pieces before their eyes. Jeremiah 19:9. And I will make them eat the flesh of their sons and their daughters. I'd also say it's wrong to kill children.
Or it's wrong to murder 6 million people in a Holocaust. Then there has to be a God. Why? Because if there is no God, then everything's just a matter of opinion.
Well, that's the worst argument ever. The only reason you don't do bad things is because you're worried what a god might think. I don't do bad things because I care about the well-being of myself and others.
That would be just your opinion against a baby torturer's opinion, or your opinion against Hitler's opinion.
So, Frank, you only think it's wrong because you believe a god told you it is.
But we all know, Alan, those things aren't just a matter of opinion. That it's really wrong to torture babies for fun. It's really wrong to murder people. If that's the case, there must be a standard beyond us, who is the standard of goodness, righteousness, and justice.
Do I need to quote more Bible verses that say otherwise?
And any deviation from that standard is what we would call evil.
Sure. The angel of the Lord went forth and struck down 185,000 in the Assyrian camp. Early the next morning, they were there, all the corpses of the dead. Isaiah 37:36. Need I say more?
That standard is what everybody knows to be God.
You said it.
If God doesn't exist, you can't say that murder's wrong. You can't say racism's wrong.
I don't believe there's a God and I think murder is wrong. There, I just said it.
You can't say slavery's wrong or rape is wrong or theft is wrong. It would be just your opinion. And yet we know it's not just a matter of opinion. So the interesting thing, Alan, about these three arguments, here's what you get if you unpack these arguments completely.
A load of nonsense?
You get a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, personal, intelligent creator who created all things and sustains all things, and he's moral at the same time. And these are the attributes of the God of the Bible, and we haven't even opened the Bible yet.
And you still haven't even demonstrated that it's even there. You've just come up with a list of could-bes.
Just from those three arguments, which is called natural theology, that God has revealed himself in two books, the book of nature and the book known as the Bible. Just from the book of nature, we can see a being like God exists without even opening the Bible.
There's a book of nature? I've never seen that in the library.
Okay. Wow. Wonderful. Man, that a great answer. Now I'm going to push back a little bit and ask a question here. What might an atheist say in response to that, right? Someone who's a skeptic or an atheist, and obviously we don't have to do this for every one of the questions, but you've presented a great argument, but what should we as Christians be ready for if we're talking to somebody so that we're not caught off guard? What might they say in response to what you said?
Oh, great. This'll be interesting.
Probably the biggest response to what I just said regarding the cosmological argument and the design argument, the fine tuning, is they will say there's a multiverse out there.
Wrong.
Multiverse meaning we're not the only universe, that there are trillions of other universes out there, and ours just happens to be the one that looks designed, even though it really isn't. It's just the luck of the draw, so to speak.
Wouldn't it be better to actually speak to a skeptic and hear what they'd have to say, rather than guess and get it completely wrong?
Okay, now keep in mind, Alan, that nobody thought of the multiverse was a possibility before the fine-tuning argument was discovered about 50 or 60 years ago. This is kind of a desperate atheistic attempt to avoid the obvious.
That you haven't demonstrated any of your claims?
Even Christopher Hitchens, I don't know if you remember him, but Christopher Hitchens was a brilliant British atheist who sounded more brilliant than he was because he had a British accent.
That's how I get away with most things.
I had a couple of debates with him, and even he admitted the fine-tuning argument is the best argument that the theists have, and he didn't have an answer to it. The fine-tuning argument is so persuasive to most people that they say there's got to be some sort of intelligence out there.
It's actually very easy not to accept that argument. See the previous few minutes of this video.
But many atheists are trying to avoid that by claiming there are other universes out there, other universes they can't detect. It's a total faith position.
There's a difference between saying there are other universes versus there could be other universes. We only have access to the one universe, and so we can't compare to see how similar or different we are. So it's far easier to say, I don't know, and wait until science explains the how, than to say it must have been intelligent design when you can't even demonstrate that it is intelligent design.
And even if these other universes did exist, Alan, they still don't get rid of the need for a creator, because you could simply ask the question, well, where did these other universes come from?
And just because you don't understand, why do you then get to fill the gap with God?
And they appear to be fine-tuned as well. So you would need some kind of universe generating mechanism to create these other universes. And you still don't get rid of the need then for a creator. And even one of the advocates of this, his name is Alexander Vilenkin. He's an agnostic astronomer from Tufts University. He wrote a book back in 2006 called Many Worlds in One. Even he admits, Alan, although he's an agnostic, he admits that the multiverse does not get rid of the need for a beginning.
There's a difference between a start point and a creation point. Rivers can form without being created.
There still has to be a beginning, even if there are other universes out there. So if that's the case, it would seem to me you don't get rid of the need for a beginner.
So while you mentioned a couple words there, and I mean, obviously we have many other questions, but can you briefly explain the difference between an atheist and an agnostic? Because I see a lot of times those words just kind of get thrown around, interchangeably. But for those watching, what is the difference between an atheist and an agnostic?
Yes, atheist means no God, whereas agnostic means not to know. So an atheist is someone who would say, I think there is no God.
Wrong again, Frank. A lot of atheists don't assert there is no God. They don't believe there is a God.
An agnostic would say, I don't know if there's a God. And of course, a theist would say, I think there is a God. So those are the three major positions. As a theist, you say, you think there's a God, although we're not 100% sure, right? But we think the evidence is beyond a reasonable doubt that he does exist. An agnostic's in the middle going, I don't know. And an atheist is someone who is saying, well, I think there is no God.
Wow. That is completely incorrect. Theists believe there's a God. Atheists don't believe there's a God. Gnostics know there's a God. Agnostics don't know there's a God. How could that have been gotten so wrong?
Okay. All right. Perfect. Awesome. All right. Let's keep this moving. Does evolution disprove God? I mean, how do we, as Christians, explain, or, the whole Big Bang theory and evolution? How do we talk about that in a typical philosophy class or something in college? So,
sure. Well, the difference first of all, the Big Bang is just the name given to the creation event of the universe.
The Big Bang has nothing to do with evolution, though. Unless, of course, you say that without the Big Bang, nothing else could have happened on Earth, since there might not be an Earth.
And there's a difference between the evidence for the Big Bang and the Big Bang theory.
Two things. One, he asked about evolution. Two, scientific theory is different to a theory you might have about how the woman down the street mysteriously died. Scientific theory is the best understanding we have given the evidence present.
The evidence for the Big Bang is that the universe had a beginning. The Big Bang theory might say, well, it just happened and we don't know what the cause is.
And there speaks someone who hasn't taken the time to get a better understanding. Frustrating, right?
I think I know what the cause is. I know what the cause to the Big Bang is. Because I think it's God, the Big Banger. He just created the universe out of nothing. He is the spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, personal, intelligent creator.
So if you know it, can you demonstrate it?
So the Big Bang is not an issue for Christians because that's what Genesis 1:1 says. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth.
The Big Bang isn't an issue for skeptics either. We accept the scientific explanation or the scientific theory.
Right? Boom, there it was. The second part of this is evolution related to biology. And the theory of macroevolution says subsequent life forms came through a random process or a non-intelligent process. Even most evolutionists will admit nobody knows where the first life came from.
And just because science hasn't quite figured it out, why do you then get to say, you don't know, so it must have been God? I still think Colin the Giant Purple Walrus had a flipper in all this. Plus, there are some very interesting ideas that science is exploring about the emergence of life around thermal vents in the ocean, with conditions that cause the spark of life in chemicals. It's fascinating.
They will say they think they have a theory that will tell us where subsequent life forms came from. Now, I don't have time to get into all the problems with that right now. I wrote a book called Stealing from God, Why Atheists Need God to Make Their Case. There's a chapter in there on this question that they can get into if they want to go further.
So you want people to read your book? Yeah, no thanks.
But let me say that even if the macroevolutionists are true, first of all, let me just say there's two kinds of evolution. There's microevolution, that's adaptation within a type, like how do finches have different beaks depending on the weather? That's what Darwin discovered,
Depending on the weather? Wow. This guy really has no idea what he's talking about. It makes it extra frustrating.
Or how did different kinds of dogs evolve? They're still dogs, but you've got dogs as small as a Chihuahua, as large as a Great Dane. They're still dogs. Macroevolution is the idea that one type can become another type. That maybe a reptile can become an amphibian could ultimately become a bird. They're totally different types.
Please tell me I'm not the only one that face palms every time Frank speaks.
And we can argue all that all day about whether or not that's true. I don't think it's true. I think there's too much evidence against it. But let me say this, Alan.
I think there's too much evidence supporting it. So where do we go from here?
Even if it isn't true, it doesn't disprove God.
And no one is trying to disprove God. That's not how it works. You're claiming there is a God and yet not demonstrating that there is one.
It doesn't disprove Christianity for a number of reasons. If macroevolution is true, it only shows us how subsequent life forms come into existence. It doesn't tell us where the universe came from. It doesn't tell us why the universe is fine-tuned. It doesn't tell us where objective moral values and obligations come from. It doesn't tell us where the first life came from. It doesn't tell us why we're conscious or where reason and mathematics come from. It doesn't tell us anything about the Old Testament prophecies or the fact that it appears Jesus rose from the dead. It doesn't explain any of that.
Or it does, but you don't understand or accept it, and instead fill in the parts you can't comprehend with God.
It might explain, if the theory is right, and again, I don't think it is, where subsequent life forms came from. But let me say this, Alan, even if that's the case, the laws that drive macroevolution, the natural laws that make it work, still need God.
Or you just claim they do.
Where do laws come from? They come from lawgivers. Why are the natural laws that exist today so precise and directional? Why do they do the same thing over and over again? Why are they so consistent? Because there's a mind behind them that created them and sustains them.
I don't understand them, so it must be a God. It's funny how this keeps coming back.
So even if macroevolution were true, it doesn't explain most of reality, and it doesn't explain the very laws that drive evolution to enable it to be true.
Or not. Did we get any evidence this time? Did I miss it? I feel like we got nowhere yet again. Very frustrating. But let skeptic Frank off the list as someone who still hasn't demonstrated how to prove God. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. From me, the skeptic, stay safe, keep thinking logically and ask questions. Skepticism is the first step towards truth. See you next Saturday.